Hello, and we welcome to the inaugural Mental Health Action Day. Multiplying Good is so thrilled to partner with more than 1,300 organizations, companies, and brands to observe this most important of days. Today is a day to take the first action to get mental health support, whether for yourself, your loved ones, or for all, by advocating for systemic change to remove the stigma around mental health. We all know that 2020 and through 2021 have been extraordinary times, and mental health issues during these times have skyrocketed. In the work that we do at Multiplying Good with young people, where we are on a mission to actively engage more than 1 million young people a year as empathetic leaders and change makers, at the end of their year of learning and of doing service, they tell us about the kinds of service that they did. And what we saw all over the country this year is that young people really leaned into mental health issues in their communities, into loneliness, into suicide prevention, into building community, and to being there for each other. Today, we're unbelievably excited to host a discussion on the ways that service itself is an incredibly powerful salve to some of the biggest threats of mental health, most significantly disconnection. What we know and what the science tells us is that service is an incredible connector, that it makes us feel good, that it helps us develop empathy, and that it brings us together. And so in this time of extreme disconnection and loneliness and of skyrocketing mental health issues, we are just so proud to be part of this consortium of individuals and organizations and to be putting our best foot forward around the issues of mental health. It is with my unbelievable pleasure to be the person who is kicking off this conversation, and I get to introduce our moderator. Kelly Wolf joined Multiplying Good 7 years ago. She was my first hire when I joined as CEO. But in addition to her time at Multiplying Good, where she is now our Chief Impact Officer, sitting at the nexus of communications, marketing, development, events, and a whole series of other things, Kelly also during her time here found ways to carve out enough time to get her master's in social work, really working with disconnected and displaced populations. She's probably the most empathetic person I've ever met. She leads with heart, she leads with head, and she brings it all together to create impact. And so we have, an unbelievably positive moment here to have Kelly as our moderator and to bring together some of the folks who work at Multiplying Good and from our own experience that we've met to really lean into this issue. So with that, again, it's my incredible pleasure to be here, that we're doing this, and to introduce Kelly Wolf.
Thank you, Hillary. It is my pleasure to be here today and to be able to moderate this conversation, to be part of the inaugural Mental Health Action Day. It is also really exciting to be having this conversation on LinkedIn. It is how I first learned about Mental Health Action Day. One of my connections was one of the founding partners. And as a mental health professional, I was super excited to see just the enormity and diversity of organizations, individuals, and companies who were participating in such an important day for us to think into taking action to support ourselves and to support each other. As Hillary just said, at Multiplying Good, we know that service connects. Over these last 18 months, disconnection has been a real point of mental health issues. And so I'm really excited today to have a conversation about how service connects to resources, to purpose, to people, and to community. You can watch today's discussion on LinkedIn or YouTube, your choice, but we are really excited to have you here. Before I introduce our panelists, there are a few things. One, you can stay engaged and participate in today's conversation by commenting in the chat. And please make sure to follow us at Multiplying Good on LinkedIn so you can stay informed and learn of stories of service and of the actions people are taking to support mental health today and beyond. It is now my pleasure to introduce our panel today. First up, we have Brady Tanner joining us from Memphis. He has been with Multiplying Good for 12 years and currently works to promote service through Multiplying Good's recognition partners across the country. Previously, Brady provided direct care to the members of the Lowenstein House, which is a comprehensive and dynamic program for individuals with severe and persistent mental illness. Brady, welcome. We're so happy to have you here today.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Next up, we have Emily Tortiana. She is the founder of the nonprofit organization Lost Got Found, whose mission is to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health by educating students about suicide prevention. Emily is also a Jefferson Awards recipient and an award-winning mental health speaker who has traveled across the country sharing her personal journey with mental health, speaking openly about her struggles and about the mission of Lost Got Found. Emily, welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
So excited to have you. And our third panelist is Dr. Jessica Green. Dr. Green is a licensed professional counselor, a private practice clinician on the Grand Strand. She works with people of all ages and specializes in mental health, anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief. Dr. Green also volunteers for many organizations like Habitat for Humanity, Horry County Schools, the United Way, and she is part of this year's Changemaker class down in South Carolina, one of our leadership communities. Welcome to everybody. We're really, really happy to have you. I am going to ask a question. I will lead off by asking one of you a question and then guiding who can answer next. But this is a flowing conversation. If you have something to add, please chime in and we will have a great conversation today. Ready to get started?
Ready.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to start with Emily. Emily, tell me how you have seen disconnection negatively impact the mental health of those around you.
So I think the perfect example for this is this past year. I have a lot of friends who have never really struggled with their mental health before that have reached out to me this past year saying that they're struggling with things that they've never experienced. So I think that disconnection, being away from each other, working from home, having students do school from home, although we've been able to kind of change and kind of go towards that new type of life with online, you definitely are going to suffer with mental health struggles from that because we're so used to being connected and social. So I've seen it firsthand in my own life. Working from home is not for me. I like being around people. I like socializing. And so it's really unfortunate to see so many people struggling, not only with the physical side of COVID, but also with the mental side of the mental health struggles.
Thank you. Brady, how about you? How have you seen disconnection negatively impact the mental health of those around you?
The same as Emily shared. I would say that personally, I know that the disconnection that I experienced poured over, and with my anxiety and bouts of depression that I had over the last 18 months, and it directly impacted not only my community, but some of the day-to-day activities that I would do, the work and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So those are those activities that connect us to our natural support systems, our community, we weren't able to access. And there are millions of people that have experienced that disconnectivity.
Yes, thank you. How about you, Dr. Green?
Yes, just as Emily and Brady mentioned earlier, but also that sense of shame, that sense of vulnerability, because when I see the word vulnerability, I think of us having to be courageous and fearful at the same time. You know, just for some of our parents or even our students, when our parents are sending our children off to college, it's that sense of fear because we're sending them off. This is something brand new for them and for us, but at the same time, we have to be courageous. And with COVID, regarding mental health, the stigma, when we look at socioeconomic status, when we look at, racial division, that's something we're dealing with within that mental health sector. So I see the sense of shame. Sometimes individuals do not want to come forward because they feel as if they're a burden and they're scared to reach out, or they reached out before, but when they've mentioned it to someone, they quote unquote down their symptom. Oh, get over it. You're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they tend to back away and back down versus being courageous and taking that step forward to receive that help.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm going to stay with you, Dr. Green. We'll go back around. What do you think the biggest challenge to promoting mental health awareness is right now?
Right now, I would say one of the biggest challenges would be breaking that stigma and realizing it's okay not to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
We have the sense of when we're feeling down and out, we do not want to seek help because of that stigma, because of what someone may say about what we're doing. When we have to focus on, I'm doing this for me, and I am no good to you if I don't take care of myself. So when we talk about not being where we need to be for other people, we're talking about family. We're talking about an educator being there for our students, being there for our family, being there for our extended family. So the main focus is breaking that stigma. And in order to break that stigma, we have to talk about mental health more. We have to talk about it and make that individual feel comfortable to talk about it and not have that sense of fear that what we tell them is going to go to Sally, Joe, or Sue. But when we talk about mental health, we're talking about it to someone who's worthy enough to hear our story, because everybody's not worthy enough to hear that story. So whoever you speak to about, that sense of stigma breaking with mental health, speaking to someone, just make sure it's the right person and you seek that help that you need and not have that sense of shame or that sense of fear.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Brady, what about you? What do you think the biggest challenge to promoting mental health awareness is?
I would agree with Dr. Green. The stigma around the perceived, public perception of what mental illness is, the way it's portrayed on TV and in movies. Mental health is portrayed as something that isn't good to be diagnosed with. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody during the pandemic has had experienced some mental health, acute or chronic mental health issues. And I think that stigma, addressing the stigma is crucial. I think also Dr. Green mentioned this, and I couldn't agree more, with being vulnerable with your story. I think, not having that shame of the diagnosis, not having the shame of communicating what you're experiencing at that time. And that just comes with therapy and with growth and self-discovery. And only through that vulnerable act of sharing your story will you walk through that therapeutic continuum.
Absolutely. And Emily, how about you? What do you think the biggest challenge to promoting mental health awareness is right now?
I would definitely echo what the other panelists said. Even in my own life, I recognize I feel that sense of the stigma. I just recently moved to California and I've started over with a whole new group of friends, meeting new people. And even when promoting my own speaking engagements on mental health and suicide prevention, that feels like a lot to share with people I just met. Mm-hmm. So I have those moments of like, oh gosh, should I post this on my Instagram? Like, what are these people that just met me going to think? They're not my support system I've known for a very long time. But I love what Dr. Green said about choosing the right people to share your story with. And what I found in my own research with my nonprofit is the more you're willing to open up and share your story, the more willing other people are then going to be willing to share theirs. So I feel like with the stigma, if you just kind of break through, find that trusted person that you can share your story with, you'll find that so many people will then surprise you and say, oh, I can relate to that. I struggle with X, Y, and Z. And it really can help break down those walls.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing from all of you, right, is that this need to connect and break through is really what's going to help not only promote mental health awareness, but also for each individual to work through their own mental health needs. And it really comes down to being vulnerable enough and willing enough to connect. And so that's going to bring me to service, right? As we talked about in the intro, all of us know that service can be a mechanism by which we connect to our sense of purpose, to other people, to community. And so I would love to hear from you guys. What are some of the ways you've seen service act as that mechanism for increasing connection, either for yourself or for those you work with? So Brady, let's start with you.
From my personal experience, service allows us to open up ourselves. It allows me to take the focus from inside my head and focus on someone or something else that's greater than myself. And that does wonders for my anxiety and my depression, to get outside of my own self and to serve the greater community. From my experience at Lowenstein House, what I saw through our clubhouse members as part of their individualized service plan was that service as part of the clubhouse model connected them to a larger community, which created opportunities for natural supports, which just drove back home the therapy and the plans that we're working on to get them to stability and then into independent living.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Dr. Green?
I would say some ways I've seen service that I've been able to participate in. Being that I am a private practice clinician, it gives me a little bit more flexibility where I can help with service organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, where I serve on the community board for the for the home buyers. Because being that I was a school counselor for 14 years before I went to private practice, I have that background as an educator. So with the home buyers program, within that program, there's also a program for your adolescents where we actually have breakout sessions where we talk about financial literacy, where we talk about empowerment, where we talk about care, when we talk about being courageous, building connections and having compassion. So through that organization, I'm able to utilize my services and able to help that organization, free of charge. Also through change makers, this has given us an opportunity to be of service to others. And again, as a previous school counselor, even though I'm not in the school district anymore, I still volunteer when it comes to career days. And because of COVID, we had to put a twist on things a little bit this year where it was a virtual career fair. So anytime I can give back to my community, anytime I can help others move from surviving to living to thriving in any of those components and areas, I'm there for them because they have done so much for me. So why not give back to my community that has done so much for me?
I love that, surviving to living to thriving. Fantastic. Emily, how about you?
Through my own therapy, I've learned that there are different types of coping skills, different categories, and one of them is accessing your higher self. So what that means is doing something outside of yourself for the service of others. So I think that directly goes with what you're speaking about, which is how can service then help with your own mental health? By doing something outside of yourself, volunteering, it'll give you that sense of like, wow, I do have a purpose, I do have value, and it can be through helping other people. A few weeks ago, so I live in Los Angeles, and the homelessness rates have just skyrocketed during COVID. And a few weeks ago, I was having like a terrible day, just like driving down the street, and I saw this man who was homeless on the side of the road. So I pulled over and just asked to hear about his story and talked to him for a bit. But I found that he helped me so much that I felt like I could help him. I donated a few dollars, but it was that sense of like, wow, this man was willing to be vulnerable and share what his struggles were, how he ended up in this situation, and gave me ways that I could actually help. That made me feel like, okay, this day was kind of crappy, but there's so much more I can be doing to help other people. So then from that day, I logged in and started to volunteer with homeless organizations. And it does just give you that sense of purpose and that sense of value when you are feeling depressed or feeling like maybe I don't matter or maybe I'm a burden to others. It really can help bring that back. And the one thing I want to note is that doesn't mean you compare your situation to others. So it's not to minimize yourself. I was having a bad day and that's okay. But it's more so just gives you that sense of like, okay, there are others struggling too. And that can make me feel less alone and I can try my best to help them.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Emily, I'm going to stay with you because you've created a whole nonprofit around elevating mental health issues, mental health education. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that work and about how you have found connection and also built connection through your work.
Sure. So I founded a nonprofit called Lost Got Found. We're a 501c3, and what it started as was just a personal project when I was a senior in college. I wanted to just share people's stories. So I would post a photo of them, a headshot, and then underneath it would be a story about what they've struggled with, whether it be a suicide attempt, different mental health issues. And then how they cope with it in a positive way is how the stories always end. And again, the purpose of that is really just to have that connection. You go online and you see on social media, everyone has their perfect life. But this was really to show that these perfect people you see in your lives, in your schools, your coworkers, your families, do struggle as well. So we have all different ages, ethnicities, races, gender, to show that everyone can suffer from mental illness. It's not just one type of person. So that's really how it started. And then from there, I was able to get stories from all around the world. And it was amazing because it just, again, showed this is not just one type of person problem, it's universal. And that made us all feel less alone reading these stories. So from there, I created a curriculum with some mental health professionals to have this in high schools. So we go into schools and we educate about these topics through interactive and fun ways, because mental health can be a daunting topic for students, but we try to make it fun and enjoyable for them. And then I go to universities and share about my own story.
Amazing. Thank you for the work that you're doing and for being here to share it today.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Dr. Green, I'm curious from you, what innovations have you made to both your mental health work and your service work to support mental health during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, with COVID, individuals aren't able to travel to the office like we usually do because of COVID restrictions. So in my office, we've offered telehealth services to those individuals who are not able to come to the office. And that seems to have helped individuals because they cannot use the excuse of, I can't come to the office, because of COVID. So offering telehealth services to those clients has helped tremendously. It's allowed those individuals to continue to receive services and not allow the pandemic to stop them from receiving those services.
Mm-hmm. And have you found this sense of disconnection, and how have you worked that through in your work with people?
Well, regarding the sense of disconnection, again, when we say disconnection, it reminds me of individuals having that sense of shame and breaking that stigma. So when we say disconnection, that's what I see. Those individuals who may see vulnerability as a negative, those individuals who may not reach out for help because of those previous experiences that they've had with a clinician. And when individuals come to a counseling office, sometimes they think, oh, it's going to be this and that, it's going to be bright. But, when you come to the office and the office is full of color, the office is, colorful, that's what they like. Because I always say, color brings life, color brings excitement. And the importance of allowing them to be their own kind of beautiful, as long as they meet me halfway, I can help them, but they have to meet me halfway to be able to reach their full potential and grow.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brady, what do you wish people would know about service being a mechanism to connect?
Service to me is a way to sort of bridge the gap between individuals, between communities, between issues. I think right now, the more that we serve, the greater connection we have to humanity, the greater connection that we have to populations that we might not understand, that we need to understand as part of a global citizen. That empathy that we create, that service creates, is crucial. And I think there's a lot of things going on right now around the world that service could be a solution to. And I know mental health connects. I think Emily and Dr. Green had shared earlier that the idea of being vulnerable, but also to share that story with the right person, that's that human connection that is so valuable for mental health.
Thank you. Emily, how about you? What do you wish people knew about the power of service to improve and strengthen one's mental health?
I think it goes back to your purpose and why you're alive. I end all of my speeches with having everyone, sorry, I'm losing my voice. I end all of my speeches with people putting their hand over their heart and what you feel is your heartbeat. And I say, you are alive for a reason. Nothing would be the same if you didn't exist. Any person you've ever met and any place you've ever been would be different without you. And I think that goes back to service. Is you're going and meeting all these people, you're able to help, whether it be in a food kitchen or helping homelessness or even donating your blood to the Red Cross. It's you're giving of yourself to others. And that can make you feel less alone and, again, bring you that sense of purpose. I know for myself with my own mental health struggles, in my darkest moments, it has been those times when I've thought, why am I even here? Like, what is the purpose of this? So again, I think it goes back to what we discussed earlier, which is finding that purpose outside of yourself.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. Dr. Green, how about you? What do you wish people would know about the power of service to others to improve their own mental health?
Yes, and to piggyback what Emily mentioned, I actually wrote it down when she talked about your passion, making sure your passion aligns with your purpose. And by doing that, it also allows you to have that sense of empowerment. You recognizing no matter who you are or where you come from, your ability to triumph begins with you. If you want it, you go for it. So if there is a mental health concern that you're having, that you're able to be courageous, regardless of the stigma, regardless of what others may say, but you go for it. And one great initiative about service as well is you have the opportunity to give back to your community. And you're doing what you enjoy and what you love. So I'm sure with us, it doesn't seem as if it's a job for us because our passion is aligning with our purpose and we're doing it to the best of our ability to help our community and be of service to others.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to ask, this is Mental Health Action Day, right? So taking mental health actions for ourselves, for ones close to us, and for our community is on top of mind. I would love to hear from each of you. A, what's one mental health action you're committed to today? And what's one that you've looked at, been committed to, or are thinking about in the aftermath of this last kind of time, the pandemic, everything that's been going on. So something you're committed to today and something that has brought support, some action you've taken over this time. Brady, I'm going to start with you.
The action that I've taken today is just self-care activities and continuing to spend time with family. That's what we have on the agenda today. And, that connectivity with people that understand you, that know you, and know some of the battles that you're facing are important. Throughout the pandemic and even before, I think what has really helped me through bouts of depression and anxiety has been meditation. And that has been crucial to for me battling some of those dark periods and also increasing the opportunities that I have within the external world.
Emily, how about you?
I'm going to piggyback off Brady. Today I'm in Philadelphia visiting my family. So for me, it is seeing my family and being with them. It's also very hard for me to do self-care practices. I feel at times selfish for doing those practices, but today I booked a massage for myself, which is not common for me. So I'm very excited to kind of practice that self-care, being away from my cell phone as much as I can today and just enjoying the people around me. And then in general, what I've done the past year, I was sexually assaulted before the pandemic. And when we all went into isolation, that was something that was difficult for me. So as things have been, as you can do stuff online like YouTube, I've been doing yoga and boxing. So now that things are starting to open up, I'm doing those practices in person again, which is so nice. So again, just kind of working on myself, the meditation aspect of yoga and the self-defense part of boxing is really helping me through that sexual assault trauma.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Dr. Green, how about you?
I would say continuing to live in the moment, not focusing on what could happen, but focusing on what will happen. Focusing on those things that you can control and those things that you can't control, being able to control our reaction to it. Because right now, with everything that we have going on, it's so easy, to identify triggers and lose that sense of control. I would say also allowing the language of mental health, or talking about mental health, be an everyday conversation, not when something's bad or when something seems like it may be off balance, off track, but talking about it in the good and the bad. We take medication all the time, vitamins every day, regardless if we're feeling well, if we're not, but we have to think about mental health in that same token. Sometimes we receive services and things are going great, so we stop. We have to continue that momentum in the good times and the bad. And also self-care, as Emily mentioned, but also continue to volunteer for your community and being able to be the face of that community. So when someone sees you, like, oh my gosh, I remember her because she volunteered for New Directions with the homeless shelter, or she volunteered for for United Way. Oh, I see her all the time, but she's always volunteering. So it's nice to be a positive face for your community and being able to, again, allow mental health to be integrated in that everyday language and that communication, regardless of ethnicity, race, gender, but being able to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing all of that. I think part of the inspiration for this day and what we see with the participation of all of the 1,300 plus companies, organizations, and individuals that have participated in Mental Health Action Day is all of us can really feel the need to do exactly what you've all just said, which is be vulnerable, make it an everyday occurrence for us to talk about, be part of, recognize that mental health is our health. It connects to everything. And so what I would love to hear from each of you in this knowing you all clearly practice this, learn it, are open to continuing to evolve. What's something that surprised you that was helpful for your mental health and sense of connection, whether it came from a service activity or one of these mental health actions you've taken? What's been something that surprised you in being on this journey for mental health for yourself or for someone else that you've seen and was surprising for you? Brady, go for it.
I think what was surprising, and Dr. Green just mentioned this around stability. The connection between physical health and mental health, and we're one being, and how do we, with multiple components, and mental health is so crucial to that. And I had taken that for granted much of my childhood, my adolescence, my early adult years. And when things became too much, I sought help, and realizing how important that is. I just had never considered that until, working in the mental health field, and then discovering, my own diagnosis and going from there. The stability of having natural supports, the stability of as she mentioned, taking daily medications, and treating your mind just as you would treat your body, and treating that with respect. It's so crucial.
So crucial. Emily, how about you?
A quote came to mind when you asked this question, and it's recovery is not linear. I had heard this before, and it was when I started my nonprofit, and I believed in that, but I didn't think it was true for me. I was like, oh, I had my struggles back in high school. I did the therapy. I'm good now. And now I can help other people. So it goes back to what Dr. Green said about having a therapist during the good and the bad, because when I was sexually assaulted and I did feel like, oh, wow, I've taken a few steps back, I need to work on a few things, I then started therapy again. And so for me now, I feel like I'm in a healthier place. I feel mentally well, but I'm still seeing a therapist because every week I feel like there's something that could be triggering or something that I could talk about. And I want that support system ready for me rather than when things get really bad. Kind of like when we talk about cancer, if you know that it's coming on stage 1, you're not going to wait till it gets to stage 4 to seek help. So for me, for my mental health, I'm in stage 1 right now. I've been in stage 4 before, but I'm going to keep doing the work so that way I have that support system. So for anyone listening, just remember that recovery is not linear, and that's okay. It's not going to be a straight line, and you may feel like you went back all to the beginning, and I felt that before for myself, but there are good and bad days, and you will get through it, and you have made progress if you're putting in the work.
Yes, I love that. I love that. The real investment in oneself. Dr. Green, how about you?
I would say, again, normalizing the language, because if we normalize the language, it allows people to be more courageous. Because just as Emily mentioned earlier, there's always that person who's not courageous enough to say, me too, I'm going through the same thing. But once you stand up and say, I'm having issues and concerns with this, that allows them to want to build that connection with you and say, me too. And with that, we can always have compassion, understanding where someone else is coming from, and have that empathy. So I would say, I call it the 3 C's, having compassion, being courageous, and building connections within that mental health community. So when an individual is feeling down and out, they don't see that sense of shame. They're able to stand up. So I would say normalizing the conversation, definitely having the ability to utilize different social media platforms to bring on that normalcy. So whenever someone does call the office, there's no sense of shame. They know who they're calling and what they're calling for, and they're able to get the help that they need.
So you bring up tools, right? I would love to hear from each of you some of the tools you use, whether it be an online tool, an exercise tool, a journal. I would love to hear some of the tools you each use or have seen other people use to take action for their mental health. Emily, how about you?
So every morning I have a morning ritual, and that is starting with a gratitude journal. So I have a journal that basically says, what are you grateful for? And then asks some other prompts like, what's something you can look forward to today? What's the positive that you can find in the day? What are you hoping for? And it really just puts my mindset in a good place. I'm so used to just grabbing my phone immediately when I wake up. So I've now tried to start with that before going to my phone. Limiting social media on my phone in general is a big thing for me. I think social media can be great to connect people, especially during this time with COVID and everything, but it also can make you feel alone when you're seeing other people together or comparing yourselves to others. So I actually have app limits on my phone where I don't go on Instagram for more than 15 minutes a day, because that's usually the one that I would spend the most time on. So for me, that works. And then finally, what Brady said is connecting your physical and your mental health. So again, for me, it's yoga, boxing. I find that my endorphins and dopamine levels are higher during that. And I feel a lot better about my depression and anxiety.
Awesome. Dr. Green, how about you?
4 things actually come to mind for me. Generally, after each session, I always ask my clients, what are a couple of things you want to change doing, continue to do, and stop doing? So it's kind of like that stoplight, red light, green light, yellow light. Positive affirmations. The bathroom is that one place we go to at least once or twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon. So I recommend, with colorful sticky notes, writing positive affirmations on there, or with the car writer, because sometimes when we get up in the morning, we're just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get up. But we go into that bathroom and cut that light on, and we see that color and we see those affirmations. And once we see them so often, we start believing them. Just as someone might say, gosh, Jessica, you have a big nose. Well, people keep telling me that, I'm going to start believing it because I hear it so often. So if you read those positive affirmations on that bathroom mirror every morning and in the afternoon, you start remembering them and you memorize them. So when we get in those moments, when we feel those triggers coming up, we can utilize that self-talk. Also, as a family at the dinner table, I call it 2 roses and a thorn. As a family, we talk about 2 positive things that's happened that day and then 1 thorn. And as a family, we figure out how we can turn that thorn into a rose. And then lastly, as far as journaling, jot down at least 2 or 3 positive things that's happened that day. So when we get into the end of the week, we have, at least 15 to 16 positive things that's happened that week. So when we feel like this week is horrible, nothing has gone right, we can go back to that journal and realize, you know what, it felt like a horrible, bad week, but there was some positive that came out of this week.
Love that. And I love that you do it within yourself, but also within the community of your family, building in connections within those tools. That's really awesome. How about you, Brady?
I think Emily and Dr. Green mentioned many of mine as well. I've got Post-it notes of self-affirmation right here on my computer screen, but daily morning rituals, as Emily had said, journaling, affirming thoughts, manifestation in the evening is meditation. One thing that I have done that has really helped has been limiting the negative self-talk. And someone had pointed out to me in therapy several years ago that if I listened to how I talk to myself, I wouldn't be friends with myself. So that has been a change, is limiting negative self-talk, and that's a daily conscious decision to make that switch. But everything they mentioned, meditation, daily affirmations, journaling, and therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to also share in that being outside and being with other people when possible, this sense of disconnection from this last 18 months, I think getting outside and seeing other faces, being in the air, I think sometimes within mental health, just getting started, thinking you need to do something can be really challenging. And I have both heard and found that if you take a walk, which is once you're out, There's so much benefit to spending that time with yourself, seeing other people, being in the air. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to give it for last statements after we go this round for this question. I want to say thank you guys so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation. So one more question, and then we'll close it out with closing statements for anything you want to share, any work that you're doing. I would like to ask each of you if you could recommend or share a service-based or putting others first-based action that our viewers could take that would impact their own mental health and their community. What would you recommend? Dr. Green, you want to go first?
I would definitely say volunteering, because with volunteering, it allows you to be able to have empathy. And just as Emily said, we're not comparing our circumstance to anyone else, but it allows you to be grateful for what you have and not for what you do not have. Mm-hmm. And when you go out and you volunteer and you see those individuals who were excited that you were there, it gets you excited and want you to help even more and see what else you can do to help your community, mm-hmm. and help, your schools and your students and adults. So I would definitely say community service and being the face of your community and being able to dismantle that perception of mental health and mental wellness.
Amazing. Thank you. Brady, how about you?
I agree. Volunteering, service, serving, your community, as defined by you, the broader community, exposing yourself to issues and populations and contexts that you might not be familiar with. Mm-hmm. I think it goes back to the very first step is to think about where your purpose and your passion lies. Mm-hmm. and think about how you want to serve. And I think Dr. Green had said that before. So volunteerism and serving with your passion.
Amazing. Emily?
I want to piggyback again off what everyone else has said. For sure, volunteering, as mentioned before. And then something else that I thought of was just texting or reaching out or calling your family members and friends who may seem like they're okay, and say to them, like, I've thought of you, I'm thankful for you, you've helped my mental health in this way. There's this social media account called We're Not Really Strangers, and they always post these different posts every week that say, send this to someone who's affected your mental health in a positive way. So if you don't feel comfortable writing out something yourself, that's something that you could do, is just send that post or that photo. But you'll be surprised at how many people are, one, struggling themselves, and two, how much that means to them to hear from you. Because I think a lot of times we assume people know how we feel about them, but if we're not saying it, it may get lost along the way. So definitely volunteering in the community, but also in your own support system, reaching out to them, saying that you care about them, asking if they're okay, and that you're thankful for them in your life.
Amazing. Amazing. So I'm going to ask if any of you, we can start with Dr. Green, have closing statements. Then I'm going to give a few messages for us to close up. But Emily, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot and ask you if you would be willing to close us out today with how you close out your speeches, because I think it would be a beautiful way for us to honor today, honor you and your work, and also all really, really ground ourselves in that we're here, we matter, and our mental health matters. So if that's okay with you, I'd love to hear some closing remarks from each of you. I will give some messages around what our audience can do to support. And then if you're okay with that, I'd love to close out that way. Great. So Dr. Green, what would your closing statement for this conversation and Mental Health Action Day be?
Well, first, I want to thank Multiplying Good for the honor of being able to be on the panel and making mental health such a major platform. Because, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. But with Multiplying Good, it's not just once a month. With Multiplying Good, it's done 365, every day, all year. But as far as the closing remark, I would, say, make sure we're taking care of ourselves. Self-care and life balance is extremely important. And one of my mentors mentioned the utilization of our personal board of directors. And our personal board of directors are those individuals we can go to that we need to talk to. When we call them, they do not send us a voicemail. When we text them, they have the read receipt on. So I know you read the message, but you didn't reply. In life, with life and work balance, we have 6 categories. We have physical, emotional, psychological, professional, spiritual. So being able to put at least one person in that category, but one person that's willing to hear your story. And I call that your personal board of directors. Those are your go-to people they pick up every time. And with mental health and seeing a clinician, it's important that we break that stigma because we're already breathing, but we just have to breathe a little deeper. And breathing a little deeper looks like calling that clinician. It looks like reaching out for help. It looks like getting that help we need so we can be that change agent and be able again to move from surviving to living to thriving and reach our full potential.
Thank you. Brady, how about you? Any closing statements?
That was incredible, Dr. Green. It's hard to follow that. I would say that reach out to those individuals close to you that you trust if you need help. I would offer this. If you don't have an individual that you can reach out to me. Reach out to anybody on this panel. I think we're here to support one another. And I know what it's like to have be in that area of time in your life where you feel like you don't have anybody, but there's going to be someone there, and reach out. And I also want to thank Multiplying Good for this opportunity, for this panel. And thank you for moderating, Kelly.
Sure, thank you. Emily, some closing remarks?
To echo what you both said, I just want to thank you both for being here, Jessica, and also Brady, and also Kelly for leading this amazing panel with Multiplying Good. I'm honored to be here and speaking about these topics. I think my closing remarks are, it's okay not to be okay. And if you are able to just take one action step, like you asked us, Kelly, what we're going to do today, if it's making that call to a therapist or just calling a friend, just do one small thing today that can benefit your mental health. And that'll just start a ripple effect with hoping to put your mental health first. So those are my closing remarks for sure.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank Emily, Dr. Green, and Brady for being on this panel with me. Please share this conversation with those who you think will value it with your networks. Take a mental health action today and share it. And visit Multiplying Good and learn about all that we do. With that, Emily, I would love for you to close us out. And thank you guys again. This has been wonderful.
Sure. So to start, I always say the story of a starfish, and this relates to Multiplying Good with all the good that they do every single day. So this man was walking along the beach, and what he saw was a boy walking a little bit ahead of him, picking something up and throwing it into the ocean and continuing to do that. So the man got closer and he saw that the little boy was picking up starfish and throwing them into the ocean. So the old man asked the little boy and he said, "May I ask what it is that you're doing?" The little boy said, "The starfish have come up onto the shore. The shoreline has now gone down. And if I don't throw them back into the ocean, they'll dry up and die." And the old man started laughing at him saying, "Don't you realize there's thousands upon thousands of starfish? There's hundreds of miles of beaches. I'm afraid you're not going to make much of a difference." And that little boy looked at the old man, picked one up, threw it into the ocean, and he said, "I made a difference to that one." So my hope with this conversation, which I know the other panelists feel the same way, as well as Multiplying Good, is that if there's someone listening right now who is struggling, who does feel alone, I know that feeling, and I want you to know that we're doing this just even if one person, it can make the difference to them, then it's worth it to us. So I ask that if you're at home right now watching, that you put your hand over your heart, and you should feel your heartbeat. And what that is your purpose. You are alive for a reason. Nothing would be the same if you did not exist. Any person that you've ever met, any place that you've ever been would be different without you. It's okay not to be okay. It's not weak to ask for help. It takes immense strength to realize that you need help and to receive help. And nothing would be the same if you did not exist. Thank you so much, everyone.